there are multiple dimensions of, let's say, competence and authority, multiple, especially in a sophisticated society. And so you're fortunate if you're good at one or two things. Most of the ways you could be competent and generous, you're just not that good at. So first of all, I would say don't be too disheartened, especially if you're young, because of course you're useless when you're young and male. It's like, of course you are. It's a very difficult thing to take your place in the world. And so you don't want to be disheartened because that's the situation that you're in. It's like, yeah, of course that's the situation you're in. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I was often asked by my students and my clients who didn't know what they should do with their lives. Well, I don't have any goals. I don't know what I want to do with my life. What should I do? And part of the problem is the question, what should I do with my life, is not a very good question, because it's sort of like, tell me about everything. It's just too much. What do you do with your life? Well, you say, you do many things. Okay, what are those things? Because I don't know what to do. Well, why don't we look at what other people do that appear to give their lives significance and meaning? And this bears on the issue of responsibility. Well, most people want to have or do have an intimate partner. So if you don't have one, hey, work on that. And how do you work on that? Well, you don't work on that by going to find the person that's right for you. It's like, who the hell are you? And what makes you think that even if you found the person that was right for you, they wouldn't take one look at you and run away screaming? So you might think, well, how about if I be the person that someone else would want? And so a young man has to ask himself, well, what do I bring to the table? Now, the first advantage he has is youth and possibility. And that's really something young men have over older men. Youth is not nothing. It's a real form of wealth. So if you're young and poor, you're young. And you wouldn't trade young and poor for decrepit and rich. So don't be thinking you're poor if you're young. It's an unbelievable source of wealth. And so that's an attractiveness that's there, that's built in. And then, well, then, are you good at anything? And if the answer to that is no, well, how about you start practicing being good at something? Pick one thing. Well, what? Well, not nothing. Pick something. Maybe it's a video game. I don't care. Get good at something. Because to get good at something requires you to simultaneously practice many skills that will make you good at many things. So, for example, I was a dishwasher when I was a kid at restaurants, and I was a good dishwasher. And, you might think that's a pretty low level of achievement. It's like, it's not. And I can tell you in detail why. First of all, most young people who go into restaurants to wash dishes do a terrible job. They show up late, or they don't show up at all, and then they quit after 2 weeks. Like, that's really not good. So what do you have to do if you want to be a good dishwasher? Show up on time. How about show up 15 minutes early, So if you work 10% longer, you make 40% more money. So that's worth knowing. 40% on 10%, that's a damn good return. So that's part of the reason men make more money than women on average, is because men work longer hours. And it doesn't take much extra work to produce quite a return. Part because any sensible boss is going to be looking for the person who goes the extra mile. And if you manifest signs of going the extra mile, even in a relatively minimum way, you just have to do better than the other people around you, then you're going to get disproportionately rewarded. And so what else do you have to do to be a good dishwasher? Learn the techniques. Stay on your toes. Volunteer to work when other people don't show up. Show an interest in learning to cook. Get along with the waitresses. Maybe get along with the customers. Act like an adult. And all of that's excellent practice for all sorts of things you're going to do later. I stopped being a dishwasher quite soon and started being a short order cook. And that was great because I learned to cook. I learned to clean a kitchen and to run a kitchen and to interact with the waitresses and to have fun with the cooks and to do it all and have fun, because you can have a lot of fun in the kitchen and in pretty much any working class environment. If you're working with decent people, it can be a real blast. It's not intellectual work in that you're not dealing with abstractions, although it can still be complex. That's why we don't have dishwashing robots, by the way. But it can be a real blast. And so pick something. Pick a job. Go do it. Get good at it. See if you can be like the best dishwasher they've ever had. And then you're the best at something. And then you kind of learn what it's like to be the best at something. And imagine you're trying to be the best man you can. That's your ultimate goal. You don't even know what that is. It's going to be a whole agglomeration of a variety of high-level skills. Well, how do you start that? Well, in any domain. Maybe you play sports. Be a good teammate. Be the best teammate. Maybe you develop your skills in that particular sport and you could be the star. Well, pass to someone else now and then, and maybe take an interest in facilitating the development of your teammates so you can do that. And so develop a vision for yourself. If you could have the life you wanted, what would you have for an intimate partner, or what would you offer? What kind of family would you like to have? Can you put your own family together? Can you reconcile with your father, your mother, your brothers, your cousins? Can you pull your family together? Can you get a job or a career? Can you educate yourself? Can you regulate the draw of temptation, drug and alcohol use in particular, sexual temptation as well? Oh, do you do anything that's remotely resembling civic responsibility? Are you a member of a political party? Do you go to church? I don't go to church because, their beliefs don't match mine. It's like, who the hell cares about your beliefs? You're like 16. You don't even have beliefs. And if you think it's like you're right and the Catholic Church is wrong, well, good luck with that attitude. And that isn't to say that the church, for example, or a political party doesn't need repair, because all institutions are always falling apart and corrupt. That's a story as old as time. That's the evil uncle. But good, you have something to do. Go fix it up. Definition of man. What am I, a biologist? But as it happens, I am a biologist, so I guess I don't have that excuse. Productive generosity is good. I once read a good description of Christian charity, and it was productivity plus generosity, which I really liked, because the hyper empathic types only concentrate on the generosity end of that. It's like, I'm generous, yeah, but do you have any money? No, I'm generous with other people's money. Yeah, well, you're missing half the equation there. And that's really the distinction between conscientiousness and agreeableness from a personality perspective. Those are two cardinal personality traits. And agreeableness, which is basically an empathy dimension, has no correlation whatsoever with success in enterprise, business, creative domains. In fact, among managers, agreeableness looks like it's slightly negatively correlated with success, because hyper-agreeable managers can't say no. They can't discipline their employees. They can't set limits. And they're susceptible to manipulation. So productive generosity is pretty good. There is more to it, obviously, more to being a man than productive generosity. But as a central notion, that's a good one. The productivity requires aim, orientation, responsibility, discipline, all of that willingness to work, that willingness to make sacrifices, which is the hallmark of maturity in the service of a higher goal. And that responsibility, the productive responsibility, should manifest itself in relationship to the individual. So you should be responsible to yourself and your future self, the community of selves that you are across time. And then you should be responsible for and productive for as many people as you can manage. And so that might be first your intimate partner, your wife, second your parents, your siblings, your children, maybe your children primarily, although, there's a trade-off there with your wife. Then your local community, then your broader community. You want to take on all that responsibility if you can, in a sense that's both productive and generous. That gives you something to do, justify your miserable life to yourself and everyone else. And you need to do that. It orients you solidly in the world if you do that. And it gives you a dragon to fight, a real one. And that's where the gold is. So, as everyone has known forever, and as we continue to remind ourselves, how should you arm yourself? Well, that's kind of what a humanities education teaches you to some degree. Arm yourself with words. Be precise in your language. Right? Say what you mean. Read great men and great women. Make yourself literate. Get your tongue in order. Get it under your own control. Get rid of the ums and the likes and the you knows and the pauses. And get rid of everything you say that you only say to impress other people. And just see if you can say what you believe to be true. That's an adventure. That's the thing about the truth, you know? If you aren't speaking the truth, well, you got to ask yourself, if you're not speaking the truth, who is it that's talking? If you're saying something that you do not believe to be true, it's not you talking. It's something else. It might be the part of you that wants to manipulate the other person into delivering what you think you want from them. Well, what is that spirit of manipulation that you've allowed to possess you? It's not you. Let's say you decide to live your whole life in that instrumental manner. You're going to craft your words like the student who says, well, I'm going to write what the professor wants to hear so I get the grade. It's like, well, you just turn yourself into that. Well, who is it that's doing that manipulating? It's not you, because those aren't your words. So even if you get the grade, it's not you that got the grade. It's the false you. It's the manipulative you. So you do that your whole life. You don't have your life. And then you think, well, God, that was a miserable life. I manipulated everybody. They were so damn stupid. They were sucked in by it. They're all contemptible. Everyone does it, you know, which they don't, by the way. And so that's a pathway to bitterness. Partly because if you're a manipulator and you use your language falsely, you don't live your own life. You live the life of whatever possesses you when you think it's you manipulating. And so you live the life of the spirit of manipulation. And there's no difference between that in some fundamental sense and demonic possession. So if that's what you want, go right ahead. But what you miss is the adventure of your own life. You know, because if you say what you think, this is a really important thing to understand. You have no idea what will happen if all you do is say what you think. Because you have to let go of everything. Just to do that, you have to assume that there isn't anything better that can happen than what happens if you tell the truth, no matter what happens. Because you say, you know, I'll tell the truth and I get in trouble. It's like, well, is that good or bad? Well, it's not so good when it's happening. When you get in trouble, that can be devastating. But in the medium term or the long term, I mean, in my situation, I've gotten in trouble plenty of times for things I've said. And many times I thought, you know, that was fatal. That was the end. I said something or it was misinterpreted. But often I said something that you know, I was going to get taken out. I was going to get canceled. And that was the end of my reputation. And every single time, and I hope partly because I didn't say things that I didn't think were true, every single time it switched around. And so eventually the cancellation attempt not only failed, but massively backfired. But man, living in that gap between when the pressure was on, let's say, and it turned around, that wasn't pleasant. But it's certainly adventurous because you don't know what's going to happen. And maybe that is the adventure of your life, right? Imagine that the world was constituted so that the true adventure of your life emerged as a consequence of truth in speech and action. Because that would be reflective of the real you, so it would be you living. And then imagine that the adventure that would occur if you dwelled in the truth would be so overwhelming that it would justify all the suffering. And I think that's true. The great people I know are brutally truthful to themselves and other people, and they have insanely adventurous lives.